What a embarrassment. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what is going on? It's your boy back at it again with another big body banger. And yes, I am guilty, like many Americans, of saying some really not smart things on the internet.
Hold on.
That's the Colombian flag, right?
And just in general, for context, I am living in South Korea and I love it out here. I have done some things when I first got to South Korea that would be considered pretty dumb. I've done things from confusing flags. The list goes on and on and on. But you guys let me know in the comments down below what the wildest thing an American's ever said to you. But before we get started, obviously, make sure you like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We have a post here that I think you guys are going to want to see. And it's a pretty extensive one. It has about 10, maybe 15 parts to it. The caption says, England doesn't speak English, they speak British. America speaks English. Let's go ahead and take a look at the context. This post here is obviously from TikTok, and the post says Americans correcting English spellings. And then of course it has 8,924 comments, with the top comment here being, England doesn't speak English, they speak British. America speaks English. And then underneath that it says British is a nationality. Now you would think the conversation ends there, but it keeps going on. As the response to that says, we created the language. We built the world, dude. The reply underneath that is, girl, get out. Of course, the next reply, it says, gas is short for gasoline, you British wanker. Underneath that it says, petrol is short for petroleum too. So right now we're having an all-out war in the comments. We have the Brits versus the Americans, and it is going crazy. You have the Americans trying to correct the Brits for their lingo and vice versa, and it's pretty crazy. Well, the next part, whoever this user is, I'm assuming is from the United States, as it says, England is old and out of date, America is new and improved. Underneath that, the response is, bro got a GPA of 2. Man, that original comment got ratioed. Oh my gosh. Then the next comment here says, it's from another American, and it says, cause we won the war, our language now. And boom, underneath it, the reply is, my ranked teammates. The next comment is from an American and says, how do you say bottle of water again? And the clapback is crazy, as it says, 3 people in the whole country says it like how you think. You guys say water instead of water. Hey. Watch out, that one hurt, that one hurt. Then another American fired back with saying gas equals gasoline, month, day, year, because we say May 9th, 2025 instead of the 9th of May, 2025, and basically the entire history of linguistics. So, of course, I'm assuming a British individual clapped back and said, your Independence Day is literally the 4th of July. Broken heart emojis. Oof. That is strange. Come to think of it, we have month, day, year format, and we call it the 4th of July. Huh. Damn. Not you guys poking holes in our logic. Good googly boogly. There's still more. Another American says, America does it better, buddy. And then underneath that, it says, next joke. Again, the ratio is crazy. Then another American enters the chat and says, we won the war. We can say whatever we want. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. I don't understand. That's like our bread and butter right there. We win wars, so therefore we can do whatever the heck we want. Not great logic. And the next American that hops in the chat says, also, fun fact, the American accent is actually the original English accent. I don't know. This is a conglomerate of dumbasses. I'm very convinced. I'm very convinced. The response to that was no. So that whole slew of what we read was the post. It was long, very long, but we have a comment that we will read, and it says, being smart must be illegal in the United States of America. Well, if you look at our education system, it is very, very questionable. So there is that. Our next comment though says, Americans always wanting a participation trophy for World War I and World War II. It's a Hail Mary that a lot of Americans throw if they're backed into a corner. You know what I mean? So yeah, not good. But our next comment does say, Americans are like Russians. They care too much about something that happened about 80 fucking years back. Why does this resonate with the recent events that have just happened between the United States and Russia in 2025? That is crazy. Well, let's move on to the next post. And of course, the caption says, if there's a what? Well, you'll find out very soon. As the post says, pupils use phone locking stations at Scotland's first iPhone-free school. And underneath that, it says, if there's a school shooting, how do they call for help? Interesting. We obviously had a comment that responded to this very nicely. And it says, when there was a shooting, the country responded by taking steps to reduce the likelihood of it happening again drastically. I did not know that. I didn't even realize school shootings were a thing in other countries, but they're not as prevalent as they are in the United States, if we're being honest. And because of that, and of course because of the gun laws in other countries and whatnot, I feel like it's easier to manage a situation like a school shooting than it is in the United States, where every Joe Schmo has a weapon. And it seems like it's the wild, wild west, where, you know, while we do have gun regulation, it's not very effective. It's almost like trying to put a band-aid over the very, very, very extensive and complex issue of gun possession in America. Now, this next comment says, they really don't know how safe other countries are, do they? No, and due to nationalism reasons, a lot of Americans in the United States believe that traveling outside of the United States is far more dangerous than it actually is. It's not that dangerous at all. To be honest, there's a higher chance of something happening to you inside the United States than leaving the country, depending on where you travel. If you're traveling from the United States. Now, of course, there are other countries out there that are more dangerous than the United States, but I'm pretty sure when you think of the most popular tourist attractions and most desired places of travel that Americans have outside of the United States, a lot of those places are very safe. So get out there and see the world if you can, okay? Because I understand money is an issue as well, so acknowledging that as well. It's not everybody can travel from the United States, with inflation being what it is, medical bills being what they are. You know what I'm talking about. The next comment says, the number one cause of death in children is school shootings. I believe they're working on this. They're gonna get preventative diseases like measles up there soon.
You also said that you, in fact, would not recommend that kids get vaccinated for measles. You said you would just lay out the pros and cons. Okay, so this is the summation of everything that you have said to compromise people's faith in the measles vaccine in particular is contrary to what you said before this committee. You said you support the measles vaccine, but then you have laid out a set of facts that are contested, and I will submit information for the record from experts who contest what you've said about the vaccine. And the result is to undermine faith in the vaccine. It's kind of like saying, listen, I think you should swim in that lake, but you know, the lake is probably toxic and there's probably a ton of snakes and alligators in that lake, but I think you should swim in it.
Senator, if I advised you to swim in a lake that I knew there to be alligators in, wouldn't you want me to tell you there were alligators in it? What I pledged before this committee during my confirmation is that I would tell the truth, that I would have radical transparency. I'm going to tell the truth about everything we know and we don't know about vaccines.
Are you recommending the measles vaccine or not?
I am not going to just tell people everything is safe and effective if I know that there's issues.
I can see that. A lot of people worldwide and even in the United States are saying the same thing. Why are we bringing back diseases that we found cures for a long time ago? This doesn't make any sense unless you look at it from a population control standpoint. Then I guess it kind of does a little bit, doesn't it? So let's get into our next post. The captions always kill me. The caption on this post says, Americans are more well-traveled than Europeans. Oh boy. Let me see what the context is for this, because that is wild. It says here, Americans are more well-traveled than Europeans. Americans rank first in geography tournaments and tests. Sorry, no one cooks in this giant country, her. Yes, you have just witnessed my last brain cell possibly hit the afterlife. I cannot believe what I just read. This sparked a whole thread. Now, obviously, if you look at the very top of what this thread originated from, it says, things that shocked me as a French girl in the USA part 2. Now, of course, in the comment section, there's an entire war going on, as the top comment here says, well-traveled within their own country. Going from one state to another doesn't really count, sorry. Oh, man. Yeah, I already know this is gonna be met with some backlash. Now, technically, does it count? Yes. Yes, technically, because you are traveling around the United States, so that's cool. And, you know, same if you're in Europe, right? If you're in Europe, you're traveling around the continent, you would technically be well traveled if you did that. But if you want to experience cultures that are just entirely different, then across the pond, take a flight outside of your continent and boom, you know what I'm saying? The comment responding to what we just read though says, United States is 15 times larger than France. I think you guys don't understand how massive the US is. Traveling to a different state is like traveling to a different country. I actually can see the logic here because if you think about it, I mean, I was thinking of it like this, right? So you have the United States of America and you have Europe, right? I was so confused with how close all the European countries were to each other. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. If we use an analogy, like Europe as a continent is pretty much like the United States. The United States has a lot of different states and stuff, and each of the states, you know, would be the equivalent of being like a country, right? Independent of each of the states. Now, obviously, it's the United States of America, so they all work in conjunction with each other. And in Europe, each country is separate of each other. Now, obviously, you have some countries in NATO and what have you, but you get what I'm saying. They're neighboring each other. So it's easy to travel and do a Euro trip, you know, from like Greece to Spain, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, all that stuff, right? And in America, it's easy to do the Route 66 trip, Illinois, Iowa, all that good stuff, all the way down to California. I'm not sure where Route 66 is, but you know what I'm saying? You can travel through as many states as possible. And arguably, I think it'd be a similar distance. I feel like you would be well traveled if you traveled all over the continent of Europe, and I feel like you'd be well traveled if you traveled around all of the United States of America. Because, I mean, the United States is very huge, and you get a different vibe based on where you travel. So I would say you're pretty well traveled in that regard, but you can't say you're globally traveled, I guess, right? You're locally traveled-ish, right? Kind of. Very complicated, and I think the conversation can swing either way as far as that goes, but the response to the comment we just read says, one state in the United States is bigger than several European countries, which is also true. So I'm saying, I guess you can say that you are very well traveled if you have driven around the United States. That's not a crazy statement, I don't think. That might be a hot take though. But there is another comment here, and the comment says, yes, but it's still traveling, isn't it? The whole point was someone from France traveling to a nearby country is the same distance as an American traveling to another state. And that's what I'm saying. If you have anybody from the continent of your Okay, Editor James here. Listen, I actually asked you guys on a YouTube short that I made how you guys define well-traveled, because I thought that it meant traveling anywhere geographically, you're good. Okay, so quick question to all my European and American followers. I'm currently editing a video and the idea of traveling popped up, right? So would you say that you're well-traveled if you as an American have traveled through multiple states in the United States of America? And in Europe, let's say you're a European and you've never left the continent of Europe, and you have traveled to, let's say, 5 to 10 different European countries, would you also say that you're well-traveled in that situation? Is the American that has traveled to several states in the United States well-traveled? And is the European that's traveled to several European countries well-traveled? Why and why not? Let me know in the comments, because I think that's a pretty interesting point of contention. There were a lot of comments that you guys gave that had very valid points, and I'm gonna read off a few of them to you guys, and if you guys have anything to coincide what I said, please let me know in the comments down below. But this cutaway is to show you guys that my mind definitely changed, and I finally realized that, yeah, if you travel around the United States, you're not very well traveled. Now, maybe you could say you're very well nationally traveled, and that's as far as that goes, but you're not well traveled. And I'll explain why. Let's go ahead and check out this first comment. It isn't about distance, it's about culture exposure. And that's what I kind of had a feeling. I'm like, okay, yeah, culture exposure when you go to these different countries would probably give you the, okay, you're very well traveled accolade. And then there's also this comment from one of you guys, which says, veteran and expat here in Europe. So I've traveled both, and no, you're not well traveled if you've never left the States. The difference is Europe consists of different countries with different languages and cultures. Yes, there are small differences between states, but they're minuscule. Everyone mostly eats the same food, speaks the same language, and watches the same television shows. That's why it's called the American culture. Yeah, very good point. Very valid, honestly, very valid. There's another comment here. It's a lot longer, so bear with with me. This one takes it home for us and as thorough as you could possibly get with these answers. And if you guys have any other responses, please leave a comment in the comments down below, because this really opened my mind to what well-traveled meant when you guys identified what well-traveled meant. Because I was going on this tangent about, oh, but America's big and there's different parts of America and you get to see this. Technically, you are well-traveled because geographically you're moving around, but you're not assimilating to different cultures. There aren't different cultures really, right? There's not a crazy cultural shift when you move across the United States. I mean, there's some isms here and there, but that's about it. Good question. I'd say an American never having left the US yet traveled multiple states is less well-traveled than someone visiting different countries in Europe alone. A major aspect is the difference in culture. While there definitely are differences in nature across America, there is little difference in the overall culture in America. Hence why we say American culture rather than say Tennessee and New York culture. While these differences are quite huge in Europe, yet not as huge than between non-Western countries, say China, India, and Tanzania. An important aspect for me is seeing people live totally different lives, traditions, languages, mannerisms, etc., which when immersed allow you to see your own cultural background from an outside perspective, as in you will only see/understand what's actually your culture when you've seen it from an outside perspective. I've lived 3 years in the US, traveled 6 states, New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Texas, Virginia, and lived the rest in Europe, where I've traveled about 18 countries: Switzerland, Germany, Finland, France, Netherlands, UK, Spain, Canary Islands, Austria, Czech Republic, Estonia, Sweden, Denmark, Italy, Hungary, Croatia, Greece. Outside of the US and Europe, I've only been to Turkey, and Japan. I do not consider myself that well-traveled since these have all been Western countries. My boy, I'm gonna stop you right there. You are definitely well-traveled, okay? You said 18 countries in Europe alone, and outside of all that, you've traveled to some other countries. You're very well-traveled, my guy, especially compared to the average citizen of the earth. I would say. Now, if I'm wrong, light me up in the comments down below, but I think that right there, this individual that commented this is very well-traveled. Let's be clear. I have friends that have traveled less, but more exotic places on different continents around the world. I consider them more well-traveled since the contrast of those places seem more extreme/different to typical Western countries in between themselves. So someone having been to Kenya, Argentina, Colombia, Thailand, Australia, India, Russia, Yemen, UK, and Germany, and the US, I consider far more well-traveled than myself. That point took it home. And I can summarize this to, as long as the cultures are entirely different and it causes you to shift or learn something drastic and reflect on your culture and either appreciate or maybe poke some criticisms at, that would be considered well-traveled. All of these different countries have different rules, different regulations, different ways of life, different languages, different ways of communication, and access to different resources, right? And lifestyles. So that is very, very, very different when you travel to these places. Not much changes when you travel within the United States. So I'm making this to say, I stand corrected. I apologize. So as you can imagine, the comments were very mixed. As this first comment says, bro probably has never left his home state, let alone left the US. And of course, lots of upvotes. This next comment says, what are those geography tournaments they won? The kind of tournament organized in the US by the US for the US, but they call a world tournament? Okay, that one's cooking, because what geography contests have we won? It had to have been local. Next comment said, how? Just how? Because most have never left the country, so I'm confused. Let's move on to the next post before I get too confused. And the next post's caption says, probably that fucking thieving midget Zelensky gave France one of ours so they could reverse engineer it. Pretty sure he got a nice personal bankroll for that. Did you lose brain cells too? Okay, cool, we're on the same page. The context for this statement, it says military news UA, and underneath that it says France has introduced its counterpart to the American MLRS HIMARS. MLRS Foudre developers position their development as a multiple launch rocket system, 100% French made. Underneath that, a user by the name John Padilla says, probably that fucking thieving midget Zelensky Zelensky gave France one of ours so they could reverse engineer it. Pretty sure he got a nice personal bankroll for that. Oh my gosh. Obviously, the comments went absolutely ballistic with this statement, this whole post. And the first comment says, French defense industry doesn't need USA to make quality weapons. They are already the second exporter worldwide. Yikes. Now, I know the United States, we get a lot of our stuff from all around the world and whatnot. I didn't realize how many of the items we receive from other countries until the whole tariff thing happened. And I'm like, oh my God, that is insane. The absolute secret of missile tubes on a truck. Oh my God. What? Okay. The next comment says, pretty sure I made it up on the spot. There's a lot of that going around. Madeupstatistics.com. A lot of people love to make up their own statistics, and it never gets old. It never gets old. We all need made up statistics to back up our irrelevant points. But we have another post and we need to get into that, and it says 6.5 millimeters of gas. Context maybe? Let's get into that. Not necessarily welding related, but for those of you not in the United States, who is the metric system?
I don't know what's wrong with you.
When you say how much gas you have left in your car, do you say, oh, I only have a quarter tank of gas left? Or do you say, oh, I only have 6.5 millimeters of gas left? I think I've proved my point as to which measurement system is the far superior one. I think you proved your point as to which education system is the far superior one. Okay, cause that one was rough. That one, I know a lot of you guys cringed when you heard that. I cringed a little bit. Good God. Obviously the comment section has something to say. And this first comment says, again and again, you think it doesn't get any dumber. And then you see these posts. I should have warned you guys. These posts may cause you to lose a few of your own brain cells. So viewer discretion is advised. I'm sorry. If I have to go through it, so do you. The next comment says, LOL, fractions are imperial now? Apparently. Good God. W logic. We let us see it. The next comment here says, tank. Is that an imperial tank or a metric tank? Here we go. I heard a comment. A European dude was like, why do Americans struggle with the metric system? It seems like they struggle with the metric system in every situation except for school shootings. Because they be using 9mm bullets. I'm like, oh my God. This next post here was interesting. As the caption says, Germany, 35 years. Now, what exactly do they mean by that? Let's look at the context, and you guys are going to be dumbfounded by how dumb this post is. See what I did there? USA, 249 years. A young, dynamic, and experimental country. EU, old as hills. Germany, 35 years old. Finland, 108 years old. Austria, 107 years old. Ireland, 103 years old. Italy, 164 years old. Croatia, Slovenia, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Czech Republic, Slovakia. Less than 35 years old each. Whoever wrote this, you need help. What is wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Anyways. The comments obviously had a lot to say, and the first comment says, so Germany is only apparently 35 years old, which doesn't even make sense. The current state, Federal Republic, existed before the unification, and Austria, 107 years old by their logic, despite being annexed for a few years by the Germany and thus ceasing to exist as a sovereign country. How did that even work? That's what I'm saying. This logic, the math ain't mathin', okay? That whole chart that this goblin user put up, what was that? Like, did somebody leak your notes app or did you do that by yourself? Because that don't make no fucking sense. I feel like somebody screenshotted this out of his phone and then posted it for the public to see because they could not believe the dumbassery. All right, our next comment says, gosh, who invaded Poland 1st September 1939? Prussia? Well, we might want to move on before this sparks a war in the comment section again, okay? Our next comment says, trying to equate the reunion of Germany to its founding gotta be the most malicious, willfully misconstruence of anything to fit their argument. Never mind the fact that the history of it and its citizens far predates its former founding in 1871. Same thing cannot be claimed about a colonized country. America has a long history. The US does not. Very true. Very true. That logic rings true. Again, you could hear the lack of education from the post that I read off to you by the American whose notes app got leaked. Because good God, should have kept that to himself. Now, this next post here is very interesting as the caption says, he didn't speak a word of American. This is gonna hurt me, but I have to read this post as it says. So this new American Pope gave his, I guess, acceptance speech just now. He didn't speak a word of American. Am I just supposed to take it on faith that he speaks American and is a red-blooded American? Merkin. Oh no, bro, like an echo chamber. Anyways, our first comment says, I'm just waiting for the day, very soon, when some magaloon in their Congress puts forward a motion to rename the English language American. Well, very recently, Donald Trump just signed an executive order making English the official language of the United States of America, and I could see potential in there being an executive order signed stating that American is the official language of the United States. It's a joke. I hope it doesn't happen. This next comment went into some vivid detail as it said, I love how this works both literally and euphemistically. Of course, the pontiff did not speak English, as English is not a church language, and he is now the sovereign of the church. And yes, the pontiff's values do not align with the right-wing American values, so he did not speak American because he spoke of a different value set, one committed to supporting the downtrodden instead of supporting having the downtrodden committed. Very well spoken comment. I'm not sure how the Pope selection works and whatnot. If you guys can fill me in the comments down below, that'd be great. But it was very interesting to find that the Pope is from the United States of America, and specifically he is from Chicago, same place I grew up. So very cool, very cool. But you'll see by the end of this video, we kind of showed our ass a little bit after the announcement of the Pope being American. Oh my God. Stick around to the end because it is pretty crazy. This next comment says, why the fuck would it matter that he is a red-blooded American? Either you are Catholic and then he's your Pope, no matter where he comes from, or you are not Catholic and it doesn't matter to you anyway. Exactly, bingo. Like, I have no idea what people's obsession with nationality is, but here we are, here we are. Now, this next post here, the caption actually says, literally has the most elite universities in the world? Let's get into this. This post starts off by saying, Europeans love to talk down on American intelligence, but guess which country literally has the most elite universities in the world? And we lead the next 7 countries combined, LOL. Okay. The response to that says, Europeans love to talk about how they speak 20 languages, can order a Big Mac in 10. I will show you quite a few Americans who have studied Japanese really hard. You will never find a European with that ability. It was just another American feeding off the first American. Huh? All right, let's get into the comments, man, because I'm pretty sure you guys are already firing off at the keyboards like, what the hell, what's going on? I would be too. As this first comment says, is he claiming no Europeans speak Japanese competently? I would think that the likelihood of someone from Europe speaks Japanese more competently than someone from the United States, just based on how the education systems are set up and the drive to learn an additional language. The drive to learn an additional language in the United States isn't as high, I would argue, as Europe. So most of the people that are out there know 3 to 4, maybe even 5 languages. In the United States, a lot of people just know 1 or 2. So very different. Just looking at that alone, one can assume that a certain demographic probably has a slight disadvantage over the other. So yeah. This next comment though says, he's right, I'm European. I don't speak Japanese and didn't even study. And I love to talk down on American education, but I don't order Big Macs. I prefer decent food. The clap back. Now, of course, this is just like, you know, if we're picking any language, right? If we picked a random language in the world to learn, I do think that your average American isn't going to have the drive enough to learn this random language as its European counterpart does, because again, in the United States, mostly everywhere, English is spoken. Are there other languages used? Yes, of course, but as we can see currently in this, the year 2025, it's almost frowned upon to speak another language in the United States. Apparently, they might give you the boot. They're kicking people out left and right. If you look like you're not from the United States, good luck. Part of that is if you speak another language, you're like, oh, that's crazy. Get your ass out of here. So of course, I think that in itself has discouraged people from trying to learn another language. They want to prove their loyalty to the country. Well, this next comment says, what on earth? How are they leading 7 countries? And why would anyone think you can't learn Japanese if you're European? Such utter nonsense. Newsflash, you can learn Japanese no matter where you're coming from. You just have to have the drive and the right education. So, wow. The more you know, the farther you'll go. But let's get into this next post, which says, you've gotta hide it for some reason. Oh, gosh. It says, a guy says he was questioned on a plane for doing math during a flight. Huh? What the hell? Let's read this, because that already sounds wild. A woman sitting next to the Ivy League economist told flight crew she had security concerns about the man. After seeing him write in a foreign script, it turned out to be a differential equation. Bro, we're so stupid, bro. It hurts. This right here is such a dumb situation. It's actually impacting the people around the idiot. You know what I'm saying? Oh my gosh. Well, the top comment for this post says, even if she didn't know it was math, a foreign language isn't a security concern. That's what I'm saying. It's not. But apparently it is these days. In the United States, like I just mentioned, apparently speaking another language outside of English is a security concern. So GG's, I guess. The next response underneath that comment says, on an American flight, it sure is. You could be writing in English so other people know what you're writing, but you've got to hide it for some reason. Shrugging emoji. Sir or ma'am, this individual was doing a differential equation. This person wasn't speaking in a different language. And even if they were, why does everybody need to know what the next person is doing on the same flight as you? I don't need to know what the person next to me is doing. I don't know that person. The entitlement is crazy. But let's see if the comments agree. The first comment says, other people have to know what I'm writing? That's what I'm saying. That's so ridiculous. Why do I need to know what the person next to me on the same flight is doing? That's none of my fucking business, okay? The person that's sitting next to me doesn't need to know what I'm doing. That's none of their fucking business. We're not all spies, okay? Our job is not to monitor the person next to us. It's ridiculous. Next comment says, the American education system. Things like this always make me wonder how they can still claim it to be one of the best worldwide with a straight face. A lot of fallacies in making the claim that America has the best education system. We still wear it as a badge of honor. I am curious though, which universities statistically are represented as having the most elite education in the entire world? I am very curious about that. Maybe they are from the United States. I have no idea. I would be very shocked if they were. I mean, our Ivy League schools are pretty elite, but again, I'm not sure if there are schools that are even more prestigious than that worldwide. I'm assuming that there are. I just don't know what country they would come from. Next comment though reminds me of when my family moved to the United States from Antwerp, and my sister and I spoke Dutch with each other on the bus like we had done our entire lives before. Apparently, other kids complained and thought we were talking about them, so we were told to stop. Blew me the fuck away, because now I am for sure gonna talk about you. And I'll do it in English too, so you know exactly what I think. 100%. It's so crazy to me. Well, how can you say that America is the greatest country in the world when you're berating people for speaking different languages or expressing their culture? One of the things that was praised for a long time was being very diverse, very multicultural, whatever. But it seems like we're imploding with that whole ideology, right? Like, oh, how dare we have so many different cultures and things and differences and whatnot. So it seems like at this point, America is just taking itself out and the world is watching. Let's get to this last post, all right? Something you have to see to believe. A group of Americans chanting USA, USA, after the Pope was, the Pope did his speech. Oh my God. It's so goofy, dude. Of course, I'm like, why, bro? Why? Of course, I already knew the internet turned up 1,000 times, especially when they found out the Pope was from Chicago too. They're like, oh, it's up, bro. It's up. Let's look and see what the comments had to say about this. What a fucking embarrassment. That's exactly what I was thinking. These guys had to have been drunk. Maybe not. Maybe not. Because that is normal behavior in the United States for sure. The next comment said, absolutely normal American reaction to the new Pope. The Americans have won the poping games. Take that, stupid world, and prepare to be loved and tolerated like never before. America. Bro. Accurate statement here. Yeah, we treat everything like a competition, and when we win, you will never hear the end of it. And to us, apparently, this was a competition, so... My head hurts. Our final comment for this video today says, the US treats everything like a competition. There must be winners and, more importantly, losers in absolutely everything. And the US will call themselves the winner no matter what the result. No matter the result. Absolutely. I mean, it's been rigged from the start. We win regardless. No, but seriously, let me know how you guys feel about this in the comments down below. And also let me know in your experience, what is the wildest, dumbest thing an American's ever said to you?